For years, Gucci Mane was less a rapper and more a recurring headline.
He's in the news again. Radric Davis, more famously known as Gucci Mane, is not only in the news, but he's also in jail again. This time he's charged with battery, a misdemeanor, but because of this arrest, he's also charged with violating his probation on other previous charges.
Everywhere you looked, there were jail photos, mugshots, court dates, wild interviews, bodies on the pavement, friends turned enemies, enemies turned corpses, and a reputation so shaky that people genuinely believed he had been replaced by a clone. To show you how bad things got for Gucci, he survived a home invasion that ended with someone dead, assaulted promoters, attacked a soldier with a bottle. He also pushed a woman out of a moving vehicle.
Rap star Gucci Mane may be going back to the slammer. The artist was arrested last Friday in Atlanta on misdemeanor battery charges. According to DeKalb County Police, a 36-year-old woman claims that, back in January, the rapper pushed her out of a moving vehicle after she refused his offer of $150 to go to a hotel room with him.
Aside from the public spirals from addiction and paranoia, he spent more time violating probation than most people spend in college. At one point, a judge decided he was mentally unfit to even stand trial. It got so bad that the police warned fans to stay away from him because he was considered dangerous. And you would think surviving a deadly setup tied to a rap beef would be the worst thing that could happen to someone, but that was only the beginning because after the violence came the betrayals and the lawsuits, the public breakdowns, the institutionalization, and finally the prison sentence that forced everything to stop. The story we are going to tell today is not a comeback story in the inspirational sense. It is a story about excess, ego, self-destruction, and what happens when street logic collides with fame, money, and untreated addiction. And how close Gucci came to never making it out alive. This is the story of Gucci Mane. Radric Davis was born on February 12, 1980 in Bessemer, Alabama, a working-class town shaped by industry, routine, and discipline. His family history was heavy with military influence, the kind that values order, structure, and obedience. On paper, his upbringing should have produced stability. In reality, it produced something else. His father lived on the opposite end of that discipline, a hustler who moved through life on instinct and avoidance, constantly one step ahead of trouble. When Radric was born, his father was already running. He fled to Detroit to evade the law, leaving Gucci, his older brother, and their mother behind. His mother became the anchor. She worked as a teacher and social worker, raising two boys largely on her own and trying to impose structure where chaos kept creeping in. She believed in education, routine, and accountability, and for a while, it worked. Radric was not slow or disengaged, he was sharp. He read above grade level, picked things up quickly, and showed the kind of academic promise teachers notice early. He could have gone anywhere, but ability does not erase the environment he was growing up in, and his environment did not wait for his potential to catch up. Before moving to Atlanta, Radric spent time living with his grandfather at a house on 1017 First Avenue in Bessemer. That address would later become something of a legend and a symbol of where he came from. It was where he absorbed stories, habits, and identity. His grandfather later died of a heart attack, but the number stayed with Radric. The nickname Gucci also followed him. His grandfather had been stationed in Italy during military service and came back fascinated with Gucci clothing. That fascination turned into a nickname passed down to Radric's father, who became known as Gucci. From there, it landed on Radric himself. As a child, he did not even like it. He introduced himself as Rick or Black, trying to separate himself from the name.
Growing up as a child, I kind of wanted to be known as I wanted to have my own name and my own person. So I always kind of went away from the Gucci. I wanted to be called Ray. My real name was Radric. Right. So I would introduce myself as Gucci. Somebody would call me that, but if I meet a girl, I'd say my name was Black or Ray. I would never say my name was Gucci.
So the family and the community definitely gave you that name. Gucci.
100%.
Eventually, he leaned into it and reshaped it into something sharper, Gucci Mane. In 4th grade, Radric moved with his mother and brother to East Atlanta, specifically Zone 6. That move changed everything. East Atlanta was louder, faster, and far less forgiving. By middle school, the academic promise began competing with something more immediate: survival. The streets were not abstract, they were right outside, and Gucci was paying attention. His first hustles were not drugs, they were card games run out of his grandmother's basement. Small money at first, then consistent money, enough to feel powerful, enough to feel smart, enough to feel ahead of other kids his age. That sense of control was addictive. Drugs came next, introduced through his older brother. The line between experimenting and committing disappeared quickly. One Christmas, his mother gave him $50. Instead of gifts, Gucci used it to buy crack and sell it. Alongside the hustling came an obsession with jewelry. Chains, rings, watches. Even as a kid, he saw jewelry as proof of success and proof that he was not regular.
I've been iced out since a little boy. Like, for real.
He described himself as one of a kind, a tourist attraction, something people stop and stare at. That self-image did not come later with fame, it was already forming in childhood. By the late 1990s, Gucci Mane had stopped treating music like a side curiosity and started treating it like an exit strategy. Atlanta was buzzing with independent hustle at the time. Studio time could be bought in cash, CDs could be pressed cheaply. If you had confidence and connections, you could move your own product. Gucci leaned into that model early. He was recording seriously by the end of the decade, not chasing radio, but building volume. He sold CDs straight out of car trunks, moving back and forth between Atlanta and Alabama, learning firsthand what it meant to be both the artist and the distributor. At the same time, he never fully left the streets. He was still dealing, still present, still exposed. The music was not replacing the lifestyle yet, it was sitting beside it, feeding off of it. That balance collapsed in 2001. Days after being kicked out of Georgia Perimeter College, Gucci was arrested for selling drugs to an undercover officer. It was his first major run-in with the system as an adult. He was sentenced to 90 days in county jail, followed by probation. The charge did not scare him straight, but it did sharpen him. Jail was no longer something he was told about, it was real and humiliating. And it came with paperwork and eyes watching his next move. You would think getting locked up early, losing school, and picking up a record would be enough to force a choice, music or jail. But for Gucci, that choice did not exist yet. He believed he could outrun consequences by working harder than everyone else. That belief pushed him forward, but it also set the stage for what came next. Because the more visible he became, the harder it was to live two lives without them crashing into each other. While navigating probation and still moving through street life, Gucci continued dropping early projects. One of the most important was La Flare, released independently. The tapes were raw and unapologetic. They sounded like the streets because they were made inside them. There was no separation between the rapper and the hustler. He was documenting his own routine in real time. By 2004, his momentum finally snapped into place with So Icy, a record that spread fast through the South and felt unavoidable in the clubs. The song was originally recorded with young Jeezy, who at the time was also climbing, and for a brief moment, it looked like a perfect alignment. Two street rappers from Atlanta, one record, sharing the buzz, but that alignment did not last. You see, So Icy was expected by Jeezy to land on his major label debut, Thug Motivation 101. Instead, Gucci kept the song for himself and used it on his independent album, Trap House. The decision mattered. The record peaked on the charts and put money directly in Gucci's pocket, but it also fractured whatever trust existed between the two. Jeezy claimed he was never properly compensated for the feature. Gucci saw it as business. What had started as quiet tension turned public almost immediately. Jeezy would throw the first punch on the track Stay Strapped, where he referenced a $10,000 bounty on Gucci's chain, a line that was impossible to ignore in Atlanta at the time. That lyric did more than diss, it implied real consequences. Gucci answered with Round 1, where he called Jeezy fake and framed the situation as an open conflict rather than a simple misunderstanding. So if Jeezy wanted war, he would get it. From that point, it was an all-out confrontation. The beef was no longer just about songs, and not long after, reality caught up to the rhetorics. On May 10, 2005, Gucci was at a woman's apartment in Decatur when 5 masked men forced their way inside. They were armed, some with guns, others with blunt weapons, and according to later reports, the target was Gucci himself, specifically his jewelry, including the now infamous ice cream chain. A struggle broke out, shots were fired, the intruders fled. One of them, Henry Lee Clark III, known as Pooky Loc, was later found dead near a middle school. Gucci turned himself in and was charged, but the story did not hold up the way many expected. Witnesses to the incident backed Gucci's account, and not long after, the woman admitted she had set him up. Investigators connected Pooky Loc to young Jeezy's circle, which only poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Gucci maintained that he acted to protect his life. In 2006, the charges were dropped after the incident was ruled self-defense. Legally, Gucci walked free. However, culturally, nothing was ever the same. Up until that moment, Gucci Mane had been a street rapper with credibility. After it, he was something else entirely. In the eyes of the public and the industry, he had crossed an invisible line. He was no longer just talking about the streets, he had survived them in a way few rappers ever would. The diss tracks that followed felt personal and final. In July 2005, just 2 months after the home invasion, Gucci was arrested in Miami for an incident involving a club promoter connected to his label at the time. According to court records, an argument turned physical, and Gucci struck the promoter with a pool stick, continuing the attack even after the man fell. Gucci later entered a no-contest plea. The sentence was heavy. He was sentenced to a year in jail, followed by an almost unbelievable stretch of probation that extended decades into the future. It was the kind of supervision designed for someone the system already expected to see again, and they were right. Once released, Gucci treated probation like an inconvenience rather than a boundary. Community service requirements were ignored and only partially completed. Judges heard excuses about unverified appearances and undocumented outreach, but the paperwork never matched the promises. Each missed hour stacked another violation onto his record. From there, the arrests blurred together: driving under the influence, possession of weapons as a convicted felon, drug possession, reckless driving, running red lights, obstruction. Every stop with police became another charge, another hearing, another extension of supervision. At times, charges were dropped. At other times, they stuck just long enough to send him back inside. Each arrest reinforced the same pattern: short freedom, public apology, another violation. By 2009, the system had lost patience. Judges openly stated that Radric Davis was no longer a suitable candidate for probation. He had completed only a fraction of the hours ordered years earlier. Prosecutors highlighted continued substance use. He was sent back to jail not for new violent acts, but for failing to follow the rules designed to keep him out. In 2010, the cycle peaked. Gucci was in and out of custody, appearing in court in cuffs while his career continued without him. His major label debut album was released while he was incarcerated. A surreal moment because while he was experiencing commercial success on the outside, inside he was facing one of the biggest personal collapses that existed at the same time. Interviews were replaced by court dates. Press runs for his album were replaced by mugshots. Around the same time in the late 2000s, Gucci Mane founded So Icy Entertainment. The label was built fast and loud, pulling in early collaborators and street-aligned creatives who believed Gucci was building something independent and dangerous in a way the industry had not seen before. At its peak, So Icy was pushed aggressively and it was moving faster than anyone could regulate. That speed became its undoing. Behind the scenes, So Icy's partnership with Miss A Entertainment allegedly began to rot. Money disputes, unclear accounting, and accusations of exploitation started surfacing. Gucci later distanced himself from the situation entirely, and So Icy Entertainment collapsed under the weight of mistrust. The first lesson was brutal but clear. Owning your name meant nothing if someone else controlled your paperwork. So he started over, and in 2010 he launched 1017 Brick Squad, named after the street address that had already become myth. The roster came together quickly: Waka Flocka Flame, OJ the Juice Man, Slim Duncan, and others formed a collective that dominated mixtape culture. The music was relentless. The aesthetic was violent, chaotic, and authentic to the environments they came from. Brick Squad was everywhere, and Gucci positioned himself as both boss and big brother. But things started to go sour fast. For one, Slim Duncan would be killed during a dispute at a recording studio. On December 16, 2011, Slim was inside an Atlanta recording studio when an argument broke out between him and another man, Vincent Hardiman, also known as Young Vito. Accounts differ on how minor the disagreement started, with some witnesses saying it was over something as trivial as studio etiquette or a small personal slight. But what mattered was how fast things went south. The argument turned physical, tempers flared, and instead of walking away, Hardiman left the room, retrieved a firearm, returned, and shot Slim Duncan in the chest at close range. Duncan was rushed to Grady Memorial Hospital, where he later died from his injuries. In 2013, a jury cleared Hardiman of murder but convicted him on aggravated assault and weapons charges, sentencing him to 25 years in prison. Brick Squad lost one of its core voices, and Gucci lost someone he considered family. The tragedy amplified the sense that violence followed everything he touched, no matter how successful he became. As grief lingered, business tensions only grew between Gucci and Waka Flocka Flame. You see, Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka Flame once moved like brothers, and Waka emerging as the breakout star of Gucci's 1017 Brick Squad and helping turn the label into a real force in Atlanta. But as the years went on, that relationship quietly rotted from the inside. By March 2013, everything finally blew up in public when Gucci took to Twitter and announced that Waka had been dropped from Brick Squad. Gucci's team later tried to walk it back, claiming his account had been hacked, but by then the damage was already done. Waka didn't wait for explanations. He made it clear he was finished with Gucci for good, cut all ties, and eventually fired back through music and interviews, signaling that whatever loyalty once existed between them was completely dead. Waka Flocka Flame's mother, who had taken on a management role, became central to the next implosion. Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka Flame did not fall out over music alone. What really tore Brick Squad apart was business and power, and at the center of it all was Waka's mother, Deborah Antony. For years, Deborah wasn't just Waka's mom, she was Gucci's manager and one of the main architects behind Brick Squad's early success. She handled bookings, deals, and day-to-day operations, while Gucci focused on flooding the streets with music. But as the label grew, so did the tension. Gucci began to believe that Deborah was overstepping, running parts of his label without his approval, creating side companies, and taking money he felt never should have left his pocket. Due to all these, communication broke down, trust evaporated, and the label that had once felt like unity started to fracture into camps. Fans watched the collapse in real time, mostly through social media explosions that revealed just how unstable things had become behind closed doors. What made this collapse different from the others was timing. Gucci was not just losing business partners, he was also losing control of himself. Substance dependence, paranoia, and unresolved trauma were bleeding into every decision. The label was still releasing music, but leadership had dissolved into something else. All of this pushed Gucci toward isolation, to the moment where the industry would stop seeing him as unpredictable and start seeing him as dangerous to himself. Before the fallout in the early 2010s with his label, Gucci Mane was already unraveling in public, and the courts noticed before the industry did. In 2011, after a string of erratic incidents and courtroom appearances where his behavior raised serious concern, a judge ordered him into psychiatric hospitalization. The ruling was not symbolic. It was an admission that whatever was happening with Radric Davis could no longer be treated as simple defiance or street bravado. He was evaluated for both mental health instability and chemical dependency, forcibly removed from the cycle he kept choosing and placed under observation. Shortly after his release from the facility, Gucci made one of the most infamous decisions of his life. He tattooed an ice cream cone on his face. At the time, he framed it as symbolism, a permanent embrace of the persona he felt trapped inside. But years later, he would admit the truth. It was impulsive, it came from a dark headspace, it was not healthy when he did it, and if given the chance to rewind, he would not make that choice again.
I was going through something when I did it, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't have did it.
After the tattoos, the implosions continued, and this time it played out on social media. Gucci took to Twitter and unloaded years of resentment in real time. Friends, collaborators, proteges, and industry giants were all named. Sierra, Waka Flocka Flame, Nicki Minaj, Drake, Yo Gotti, producers, executives, fellow rappers, nobody was off limits. He accused them of betrayal, disloyalty, theft, manipulation, and hidden agendas. Some claims were personal, others were incoherent, all of them were public. What made the meltdown disturbing was not just the volume, but the lack of restraint. Private grievances became global statements, sexual claims, financial accusations, and violent language were mixed together without filter. At the center of the rants was a recurring theme. Gucci believed everyone around him was disloyal. That success attracted parasites. That the industry was built on deception. In moments of clarity, he even acknowledged that jail had humbled him, yet the tweets suggested the opposite. His paranoia and ego seemed to be feeding each other. You would think being ordered into psychiatric care would slow things down. Instead, the meltdown worsened. And just when it seemed like the damage could not get any deeper, his behavior crossed another line. One that would take the collapse off the internet and back into the courtroom. Before it collapsed, the relationship between Gucci Mane and Yo Gotti was real. They were not casual collaborators, they built momentum together. Tracks, joint mixtapes, studio time, shows. Their chemistry worked because it came from a shared background rather than label strategy. Atlanta and Memphis moved in sync, and for a moment, it looked like a genuine Southern alliance built on mutual respect and similar hustler mentalities. That made the fallout hit harder. The breaking point came in October 2012. Gucci was preparing to release Trap God, a project deeply tied to his identity. The release date was not random. October 17th, 1017 was the foundation of his brand, his label, and the address that defined his origin story. When Yo Gotti announced that he would drop his own mixtape on the same day, Gucci did not see it as pure coincidence. From Gotti's perspective, it was either accidental or an opportunity for both of them to dominate the conversation together. He claimed he did not realize the overlap at first and reached out once he became aware. According to him, the idea was to make it a moment for both camps. But Gucci did not respond.
Dropping on the same day, I didn't know in the beginning. I found out probably a day or so later. Right. You get what I'm saying? But once I found out, because he's supposed to be my homeboy, you get what I'm saying? I hit his phone immediately. I'm thinking like, oh man, we're gonna shut it down.
Yeah, shut the internet down.
You get what I'm saying? Like me and home come out on the same day, it's a wrap. So I hit him, you know what I mean? I hit him to chop it up back there. I ain't getting, he ain't hit me back and he ain't answer. So I'm thinking like, maybe he got a different number. You know how they be. Niggas change numbers all the time. Right. So I hit Coach. I told Coach to tell him reach out to me. He never reached out to me. I still ain't thinking nothing about it because this supposed to be my homeboy. Right. You get what I'm saying? Then, last minute, we in the lab, we heard about the tweet. When we heard about the tweet,
Publicly, Gucci framed the move as disrespect. Dropping on 1017 without being part of 1017 felt like riding his wave. Even when Gotti shifted his release date by a day in an attempt to defuse the situation, the damage was already done. Gucci had already decided the line was crossed. Diss records followed, shots were taken in lyrics, and the tone was unmistakable. What made the situation worse was that the music conflict was only the surface. Beneath it was something far more personal. It later surfaced that Yo Gotti had slept with Keisha Kaur while Gucci was incarcerated. At the time, Gucci was dealing with addiction, legal trouble, and mental instability, but that did not soften the blow. In the street code both men claimed to live by, that was unforgivable. Gotti's defense was ignorance. He said he did not know Gucci was serious about her.
I know, like you in love and all that.
Yeah, I got you.
Come on, man, you know how to get.
That explanation did nothing to repair the damage. Once that truth entered the picture, the release date argument became symbolic rather than central. They continued to diss each other in various tracks, and what followed would push the conflict beyond music. Encounters at clubs turned tense, stories circulated about altercations and near violence. Bookings were canceled, the South picked sides whether it wanted to or not. In 2013, the spiral reached its breaking point. In March of that year, Gucci Mane was involved in a violent incident at an Atlanta nightclub. A soldier approached, reportedly asking for a photo. Instead of a refusal or security intervention, Gucci struck him in the head with a champagne bottle. The blow caused a deep laceration, a concussion, and required emergency treatment at the hospital. The victim later described confusion and shock, unable to understand why a simple interaction turned violent so quickly. Law enforcement did not frame the incident as celebrity misconduct. They framed it as way worse. Police publicly described Gucci as dangerous, cautioning that future interactions with fans could escalate unpredictably. That label followed him into courtrooms and police reports. It changed how officers responded to him and how judges evaluated risk. The violence did not stop there. In September 2013, officers responded to reports of an altercation involving Gucci in East Atlanta. When police arrived, he was visibly agitated, yelling, making threats, and acting in a way that raised immediate concern. During the search, officers found a loaded firearm and substances on him. Emergency medical personnel sedated him and transported him to the hospital for psychiatric evaluation before he was booked into jail. That same month, authorities connected the dots. Gucci had been found in possession of firearms on multiple occasions within days of each other. As a convicted felon, that crossed a line the federal system does not ignore. A grand jury indicted him on charges of possession of firearms by a prohibited person, each carrying significant potential prison time. In 2014, while sitting in custody, Gucci pleaded guilty. The chaos that had defined the previous decade left him with no leverage. In August of that year, a federal judge sentenced him to 39 months in prison. The ruling was definitive. No more revolving doors or quick releases. This time, he was going away for real. For most people, this would have marked the end of this story, but prison did something no judge, label, or intervention ever managed to do. It finally slowed him down. It removed every distraction, every enabler, and every excuse. When Gucci Mane entered federal custody in 2014, he did not treat it like another pause in a problematic cycle. This time, something shifted. Inside, he became rigid about routine. He cleaned up his diet completely, cutting out junk and relying on simple, consistent meals. Squash, zucchini, nuts, salmon, chicken, water measured daily, over 100 ounces without fail. Over time, the results became impossible to ignore. Gucci dropped nearly 100 pounds, going from close to 290 to around 190. His face thinned and his posture changed. Even his speech sounded clearer, no longer slowed by substances or exhaustion. Even while he spoke openly about how brutal prison was, he also acknowledged that it had reshaped his life in ways nothing else ever had.
Going through the system, what are your thoughts on prison?
I think prison is just, it's very challenging, man.
Really?
It's hard.
Right.
It's something it's hard for me to even describe it. Like, people say it changed me for the better, and I grew a lot in prison, but it's a terrible place to be.
When he was released on May 26, 2016, the reaction was immediate and unhinged. Within 24 hours, he dropped first day out the feds, reasserting his presence before anyone could frame his return for him. The visuals told a story no press release could. Gucci looked like a different person. For the first time in his adult life, Gucci Mane stayed out. No arrests or headlines or public meltdowns. Not long after, in that same year, he married Keisha Kaur, the same woman whose name had once been dragged through industry beefs and personal betrayal. This time, the relationship was stable, intentional, and public in a way that was really different from everything that came before it. Gucci openly credited her with helping anchor him, not by controlling him, but by reinforcing the discipline he had built in prison. With his personal life under control, he rebuilt his business deliberately. 1017 returned as a rotating label structure. New artists with new deals and new systems to manage them. Some succeeded, some failed, some fell back into the same traps Gucci had spent years trying to escape. And that is where the shadow followed him. The idea of the 1017 curse began circulating again. Artist after artist associated with the label faced incarceration, violence, or death. Outsiders blamed Gucci. Insiders told a different story. Gucci had tried to pull people out of the environments he knew too well. He offered contracts, money, exposure, and exits. But he could not rewrite choices for them. What made this era different was how Gucci responded. No rants, no public threats, no Twitter explosions. When tragedy struck, he mourned quietly. When artists failed, he acknowledged limits. He no longer positioned himself as a savior or a tyrant, just a survivor who understood how hard escape really is. Today, Gucci Mane is far from the legal chaos that defined much of his early career and has reinvented himself as a multifaceted figure in music, business, and culture. In recent years, he released a deeply personal memoir titled Episodes that delve into his mental health journey and resilience, showing a side of him that goes beyond the trap persona he rose to fame with. He remains active musically, unveiling his 17th full-length project Episodes on October 17th, 2025, a date he often uses symbolically tied to his identity and brand, and continues to release music and collaborations. Gucci continues to perform live, appearing on festival lineups and hybrid concerts that blend genres, including high-profile events like the Gods of Chaos shows in late 2025 that position him alongside artists across hip-hop and heavy music. On the business side, he still oversees his imprint, 1017, and engages with artists connected to his legacy. He publicly celebrated the early release of rapper Pooh Shiesty from federal prison, showing continued involvement in the careers of those linked to his label family. Even decades into his career, Gucci Mane continues to evolve, working on new music, engaging with his community of artists, and shaping his legacy far beyond the headlines that once defined him.